Hello and welcome to another episode of Transform Yourself with Helen Margaret. How are you doing? What's been good? I ask my clients this at the beginning of every session, and I do it because I want them to be in the upstairs of their brain, the part of the brain where they can make choices and problem solve. And also it helps them release all of those wonderful chemicals that make us happy and help us recognise that we can cope. What's been good with me? Well, lots of things, but one of the main things is that I'm now a qualified hypnotherapy supervisor, which means that I can support other hypnotherapists with keeping their practice up to date. I'm very excited about this, and I've already had my first group session and it went really, really well. So a shout out to all of those wonderful women who joined me on the group session on Friday. I'd like to give a shout out also to my new listeners. I've got listeners from all over the world right now. In the United States, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Russia. And my newest listener lives on a little island just off the coast of Naples called Ischia. It's wonderful to have you as part of my hypnotherapy tribe. Today's episode is all about having a healthy relationship with food. It's one of the big hitters in hypnotherapy, and it's one of the main reasons that people come to see hypnotherapists. Most of my weight management clients are women because culturally women have a lot of pressures on them to be the perfect body shape. But I do think that these days there are lots of pressures on men as well. And a lot of us have complicated relationships with food for all sorts of reasons. And these relationships can often be accompanied by guilt and shame because we feel that we don't have the willpower to control our eating. Well, I want to start off by saying it's nothing to do with willpower, and I'm going to explain why that is in a little while. This is also a sneak preview of workshops that I'm going to be holding at Evolution Health in Whitstable starting on April 26th. There will be 4 weekly sessions for a maximum of 4 clients to help them understand why their eating isn't as healthy as they'd like it to be, and how they can change their relationship to food. If you're interested in these workshops, this is a good place to start because I'm going to give you some of the basics around why we eat the way we do and what we can do about it. Before we get started, I want to say that I'm not a neuroscientist. My experience of neuroscience is based on how best to help my clients. I'm not an expert. If you want more in-depth information about neuroscience, I recommend Dr. Andrew Huberman's podcast. He is a neuroscientist and he has fabulous insight. I'm also not a nutritionist. I don't give advice on what to eat. I just help my clients develop habits that work better for them. I do see clients with eating disorders, but this episode is not about eating disorders, and I would not recommend it for people who believe that they might have an eating disorder. If you want help because you suspect that you might have an eating disorder, your first port of call should always be your GP. So let's begin by talking about willpower. Willpower means that we say no to food, that we just don't do it. We don't eat that piece of cake or that piece of chocolate. We don't drink that glass of wine. We just simply don't do it. Unfortunately, the brain doesn't work that way. It doesn't recognise the no, the don't do it, the negative. By saying don't do something, it's going to make you think about it more and have serious cravings until you give in and eat more than you might have done in the first place. For example, if I said to you, don't think about a pink elephant, you're automatically going to think about a pink elephant. Your brain isn't wired to stop you from doing something. Instead, we have to replace it with something else, do something healthier and better for us to replace the urge that we have. The way we eat is habitual. We have habits. And just like any other habit, we have to replace the unhelpful habit with a habit that is more helpful. It's not an overnight fix. It's not something that is done to you. You have to work with the hypnotherapist to make effective change in your brain, to develop a new habit and the old one will eventually wither away because it's not being used. A lot of what I do working with weight management clients has to do with developing new and more helpful habits for them. Changing eating habits can be tricky because, unlike things like smoking, we can't just simply stop doing it. We have to eat to survive, unlike smoking where we can stop it completely. So we have to work on the habitual practices that we have around food that perhaps have little to do with hunger. And I want to start here by looking at the typical mechanisms for eating, which are hunger and fullness. Hormones in our guts send messages to our brain to let us know when we are hungry and when we are full. The hormone ghrelin is released when we need to eat, and it tells our brains that we're hungry. And then it's suppressed when we are full, and another hormone is released called leptin, which lets us know that we are full. This is the very basic mechanism of eating. However, these hormones can get out of balance, and our brains can stop listening to them for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with hunger and fullness. And this is where the problems begin for us. We all have memories of eating very yummy but high-calorie food. When my son was about 2 years old, he had his first taste of chocolate. It was a Malteser. And I put the Malteser into his mouth, and because it's hard at first and there's no taste, he looked a bit confused. He's like, what is Mum doing putting this ball in my mouth? And then it started to melt, and his expression changed. It became one of euphoria. Absolutely wonderful taste as it melted in his mouth. Now, he doesn't remember that first taste of chocolate, but it is embedded in his memory as a very pleasurable experience. And the pleasurable experience is less to do with the taste and more to do with the chemical reaction in his brain as a result of trying the chocolate. It released dopamine. Dopamine is a feeling of euphoria, and it's very short-lived. So we have to keep repeating behaviours in order to continue having releases of dopamine. Our first taste of something absolutely delicious is repeated as we eat it again, and that memory gets stronger and stronger. And here's where wires get crossed, and we start to associate eating high-calorie, yummy food with helping us with other parts of our day. Managing our emotions. So, for example, if you've had a really bad day at work and you come home, you might reach for a pint of ice cream in the freezer, and you might eat some of it or all of it. That dopamine kick that you get from eating the ice cream is going to stop you from feeling stressed. And that memory is embedded again in your brain. So whenever you're feeling stressed, bored, unhappy, or sometimes even wanting to celebrate, you reach for something that is perhaps not the healthiest option for you because of the dopamine kick that you get as a result of eating it. And this kind of eating has nothing to do with hunger. It means that we might override the feeling of fullness, or we might not recognise that we're not hungry because it's the dopamine we want more than anything else. That's how an unhealthy eating habit is born. And stress is a significant factor in weight management as well, because when we're stressed, we release stress hormones like cortisol, and cortisol increases fat storage. It stops us from using the fat because it believes that we need that as energy to fight off a perceived threat. If we go back all the way to episode 1, where I talked about the brain, the difference between the intellectual brain, which is a younger part of our brain, and the primitive brain, which is very, very old and has not evolved at all, it's survival down there, it's life and death. So every perceived threat is as significant as being faced with a polar bear that's going to rip you apart. And so the fat storage in that case is going back to our primitive roots, because we would need to be able to have energy to run and to fight off the polar bear. But stress at work is not a polar bear. However, the response to stress is the same as if it was a polar bear, hence the storing of the fat. I hope you're beginning to see now that willpower or self-control have very little to do with our eating habits. There are multiple factors, and I'm going to continue talking about them right now. I want to reaffirm that the primitive brain has not evolved at all and assumes that the world in which we live in is very much a primitive world. In that time, food was scarce. We didn't always know where food was coming from. And so if we came upon a source of high-calorie food, our brain would encourage us to eat as much as possible because it may not be available very soon after. Our primitive brain has no idea that now high-calorie food is fully available to us. It still gives us the same impulse to eat as much as possible to keep us alive, which is not very helpful. Combined with that, there are all sorts of cultural conventions around eating. For example, your parents might have told you when you were growing up that you needed to clean your plate, that you had to eat everything on the plate, regardless of whether you were full or not. Perhaps you went to visit family and they encouraged you to eat, and it was considered impolite not to eat something, even though you didn't want to eat. Perhaps your mum would help you drown your sorrows in a piece of cake if you'd had a bad day, or maybe take you out to dinner if you were celebrating. Food is social. It's not just a matter of survival anymore. I remember my mum would always tell me when I was going to a children's party to eat my sandwiches before I ate my cake. And did I listen? Of course I didn't, because the cake was so much better than the sandwiches. When I came back from university for a visit, my mum would tell me that I'd lost too much weight and I needed to eat more to fatten myself up again. All of these things impact how we respond to food as adults. If we recap the multiple factors that influence our eating, we've got the dopamine hit that we get from eating high-calorie foods that encourage us to override the feeling of hunger and fullness and eat because of emotional needs. We've got stress hormones being produced if we are stressed, and they encourage fat storage, again, as a primitive way to increase our chances of survival. We've got the primitive need to eat as much as possible in terms of the high-calorie food because of the belief that food is still scarce, even though it's not. And then we've got all of the cultural factors that go into our eating habits that come from family or come from our particular cultures. Many of my clients are able to manage their eating during the day, and it's at night when they're home and relaxed that they find that the eating becomes a little less controllable, and that becomes a habit. So eating's managed during the day and then overeating at night, maybe for stress, maybe for boredom, but simply for habit as well. And there's always a degree of guilt and shame that they're not doing better, that they're not managing their eating, and they seem to have no self-control, which, as we can see already, is not helpful because it doesn't have anything to do with self-control. And also, guilt and shame put us into the primitive part of our brain because down there it's all very negative. And so we're not able to make good choices if we're beating ourselves up. I've given you all the reasons why we don't always have the healthiest eating habits. So what can we do about them? How can we change? And the good news is that our brains are plastic. They can change. And just as we can develop an unhealthy eating habit, we can equally develop a healthy eating habit. So all is not lost. There are many things that we can do to change our habits. As I explained earlier, to change our habits, we don't start by saying that we're not going to do something. We start by saying we're going to do something else instead. We're going to replace the less helpful habit with a more helpful habit. It takes time for new habits to be embedded into our brains, but with consistency and persistence, we can develop stronger neural pathways that support the new habit, and the old neural pathways of the old habit will fizzle away because if we don't use it, we lose it. My clients have to decide what they're going to do instead of eating. For example, if it's in the evening when they get home from work, what are they going to do instead? For some people, it might be go for a walk. For some, it might have some kind of social interaction with friends and family. For some, it might be to take a nice hot bath, read a book, listen to music. Humour is very powerful in changing our habits and distracting our primitive brain from the urges we might have to eat. So maybe watching something funny or listening to something funny can also be very helpful. It's important to remember that we can release dopamine without eating anything. Activities like walking, exercise, swimming, maybe doing a bit of yoga can release dopamine and make us feel just as good as if we'd eaten a piece of cake. Having social interaction with people, talking to our friends and family, maybe going around to their house having a cup of tea, can also do the same thing. Listening to uplifting music, a song that you really like and that just makes you feel like you want to dance in your kitchen, that's also releasing dopamine. And oddly enough, if we set goals and achieve them, we also release dopamine because we feel good about ourselves instead of feeling the guilt and shame of not having any control. And it's all about balance as well. We don't have to listen to our primitive brain when it says that we need to eat as much ice cream as possible. We can eat a little bit of ice cream and then stop and start to listen to our hormones again when we're full, when we're hungry. And the biggest one of all is relieving stress. If you remember back to episode 1 when we talked about the stress bucket, all of the little things and not so little things that go into our buckets every day as we go through our lives. We empty those buckets every night through sleep, and in particular the REM sleep cycle, where all of the negativity is taken out of the memory and we wake up realising that we can cope with it after all. If you're not having restorative sleep, or if you've got too much in your stress bucket, then this is not going to happen. You're not going to empty it because REM sleep is restricted to about 20% of your sleep, depending on your age. Which means that you're going to wake up feeling miserable, not really ready to cope with the day, and then you're adding more to your stress bucket as you go on. This is the starting point for anybody coming to see me for hypnotherapy related to eating habits. Try and make sure that you're emptying your stress bucket every night through good sleep, and also not putting so much into your stress bucket in the first place. Things that don't need to go into there are things like worry, anticipating problems, feeling bad about things that we've done or that we haven't done. All of these things that aren't actually real. We can't change the past, and we haven't got a crystal ball to look into the future. So why not positively forecast? Because it's not going to make any difference to the outcome if we worry about it. These are the two main areas of focus when I work with clients who want to change their eating habits. Once we've got an empty stress bucket, we are in our intellectual brain, which allows us to make choices and problem solve. And when we're in this part of our brain, we're feeling more positive and we can make choices and override the urges of our primitive brain. We can make choices to do something different. And that's where the habits grow, is by being in our intellectual brain, emptying our stress bucket, positively forecasting the future. If you remember from episode 1, our 3 Ps, positive action, positive interaction, positive thinking. These 3 things help us to keep our stress buckets to a minimum and help us remain in our intellectual brain so that we can make choices that work better for us, rather than simply reacting to the urges that come from our primitive brain. Remember that habits are developed through repetition. The more you repeat a habit, the stronger it becomes. The neural pathways grow and develop, and the old habits wither away because you're not using those neural pathways anymore. In the upcoming workshops, I'll be going into these things in more depth and providing practical and hands-on support for the 4 clients that I work with over this 4-week period. If you're interested in this, please contact me or look for flyers either at Evolution Health Clinic on Borstal Hill, Whitstable, or at Revival Food and Mood, the cafe in the High Street. And there is a QR code that you can scan and it will take you to the registration page. The cost is £100 for the 4 sessions. In these sessions, you will get bespoke support, more tailored to your individual needs, because I'm more able to do that with 4 clients, which is why I'm keeping the group very small. Today's relaxation session is all about beating all of that stress and helping you relax so that you feel totally at ease and remain in your intellectual brain rather than being bogged down by the lies that your primitive brain tells you. Now is the time for you to find your comfortable spot, whether that be in the lunchroom, whether it be in bed if you're ready to go to sleep, somewhere where you can relax, obviously not while you're driving, but somewhere where you can just stop for a moment. You might need a blanket to put over you, a little quiet space where you can enjoy this relaxation session. And of course, it's here for you to replay at any point that you need a little bit of a refresher. Stop the recording now so that you can make yourself comfortable, and then we'll begin. Take the time to settle yourself down. This is your time now to relax, to be in the present moment, and to focus on you and nothing and no one else. You might need to adjust yourself a little bit to feel totally comfortable. Maybe scooting around in your chair or on your bed to find the perfect spot. Maybe adjust your blanket. Maybe you're getting ready to close your eyes so that you can blot out the world just for this moment and be inside your head. Now is all that there is for you to be concerned with. There is no past, there is no future, only this present moment, where you're going to enjoy the sensations of being light and relaxed and all of your muscles feeling like there's no tension in them whatsoever. We're going to get rid of all of that for a little while and put you into a space where you can really enjoy yourself, really enjoy the moment and find all of the benefit of being relaxed and stress-free. We're going to put a hold on the stress for the moment. And then when you go to sleep tonight, your subconscious will begin to manage all of that stress and empty your bucket and help you to wake up feeling totally relaxed and refreshed and ready to face your day no matter what it throws at you. Feel the weight of your body on the surface that you're lying on or sitting on. Maybe it's the softness of the bed, or maybe it's the firmness of the cushions on your chair. Maybe you're lying on a sofa, but just feel it from your toes all the way up to your head. You're connected, you're grounded by being connected to this space. And you feel comfortable already, and you already feel like you've let go of certain stresses of the day. So you're already beginning to feel pretty good. I want you to imagine that you're at the bottom of a hill. You're at a gate that's going to lead you through to the hill that you're going to climb. But next to the gate, there is a shelf. And on the shelf, you're going to put all of your worries, all of your fears, all of your concerns, all of your negative self-talk. You're going to put it into a big black bag and put it on the shelf. Just imagine now all of those things just being thrown in. Maybe you're throwing them in, maybe you're just putting them in, maybe you're tossing them away. But you feel lighter as you do this. You feel yourself straightening, your body straightening, because you're not weighed down by this anymore. You feel light and straight and relaxed because you can let go of this. And you're putting each item into that black bag and popping it onto the shelf, so that when you climb the hill, there is none of that available to you. You're totally ready to face the relaxation, because already you've let go of all of that stress, all of that worry, all of that fear, going into that black bag and popped onto the shelf. And you have a big smile on your face as you do this. It's a very happy moment, because you're relinquishing all that holds you back, all that holds you down, and you enjoy this experience because of that. Because suddenly you feel like you can cope with anything, because you've just emptied your stress bucket into the black bag and left it behind. And now you're going to go through the gate. You can feel the wood and maybe a little bit of moss on the gate, because it's a very old gate. Lots of people have travelled this path, and you have travelled this path many times as well. It's very familiar to you. It's a place that you know. Maybe it's somewhere that you've been, or maybe it's somewhere that you've imagined. So you open the gate and walk through it, and automatically you smell the woodland that surrounds the hill, the beautiful earthy smell that lets you know that you're in the midst of nature, in the midst of the trees and the earth, and all of the bluebells and the daffodils are now blooming right at the bottom of the hill. And it's just spectacular. It's amazing. And you're really enjoying all of those fragrances that let you know that you're in a very natural space. There's a pathway that takes you to the top of the hill. And it's not a difficult hill to climb. It doesn't take a lot of energy. It takes enough that you can climb easily, slowly if you want to, or you can move quicker. You might want to run up the hill. You have so much energy now that you've let all of your worries go. Or maybe you want to jump, hop or skip. However you get up that hill is totally up to you. And your climbing as you climb makes you more happy, more relaxed, because as you look behind you, you can see the remnants of the little bits of stress that you're leaving behind as you climb the hill, like little bits of fairy dust, just left along the pathway, leaving more and more behind as you go. And your shoulders lower, you can feel them just relaxing and making you feel so light, maybe even a little bit heady, because you're not carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders anymore. And your arms are waving around in the beautiful sunshine, just feeling the air on your skin. And you can hear birds singing as you're walking up the hill, getting louder and louder the closer you get to the top of the hill. It's not strenuous. It's actually very calming, and each step you take, you feel more and more relaxed as you move closer to the top of the hill. You're on your own, there's nobody else around you, but you don't feel lonely, you don't feel unsafe, you're perfectly safe and relaxed. And you're enjoying every moment of this walk, this gentle walk up the hill. Not stressful, not difficult. And you're just taking every step and focusing on each step. Maybe the first step is a little crunchy because there are twigs underneath your feet. And maybe as you move closer to the top of the hill, it becomes softer because it's just the mosses and the earth. There's no more twigs. And as you walk, you're remembering happy memories of being outside, of being in a natural environment. Maybe it was a forest, maybe it was a hill, maybe it was the beach, maybe it was your back garden. But you're enjoying those memories, and they're making you smile. You feel so good, and that you are driven to get to the top of this hill, slowly or not. It's totally up to you whether you have masses of energy or whether you just want to take it easy, just gradually strolling up the hill. There's no pain in your muscles because this isn't a hard climb. It's perfect, and the further up you climb, the more relaxed you become, and the bigger smile on your face as you think about times that you've been out in the countryside and you've been in the moment where you've just focused on all of your senses, feeling the cool air on your skin, smelling the deep earth, hearing the birds singing, maybe there's some rustle of leaves in the breeze. All of this as a total experience is making you feel completely relaxed, because all of your worries, all of your fears, you've left behind at the gate. You finally get to the top of the hill and you see that there is a bench to sit on. You sit on the bench and you notice there's a bottle of very cool water on the bench next to you. You take a sip of this water. It's so cold and refreshing after your walk. And you sit back on the bench. You don't have to be anywhere. You don't have to do anything now. And you just sit back and relax. And you look out on the great expanse below the hill. The view is amazing. You can see for miles. Maybe you see houses, little houses, because you're looking from a distance. Maybe you can see roads or pathways. Maybe you can see rivers and streams like little snakes just moving slowly through the landscape. Maybe you see people that look like ants from your distance, but you're at a distance from it, so nothing of that world affects you. You can enjoy it from a distance, being a little bit divorced from it, and you're enjoying that because you are looking down on it and getting perspective on the bigger picture of the environment that you're looking at. It's so calm and beautiful, and only natural sounds, none of the noises of the modern world can you hear. Just you and this bottle of water relaxing on this bench, and you feel so relaxed, so calm. You take a few deep breaths just to get everything back again after your little exertion. Nothing strenuous, but just a little bit. You breathe in slowly and hold it for a minute, and then breathe out again and enjoy just the act of breathing. Often we forget about it because it's such an automatic response, but when you think about it and regulate your breathing, it feels so wonderful, and it keeps you in that present moment when nothing else matters. And at this moment, at the top of the hill, nothing else matters. And your mind drifts and dreams on everything and nothing, thinking about everything and nothing. And you realise that you're in a pretty good place. This moment is perfect. But what would it be like if it was a little bit better? You challenge yourself to think, what would be better? What would be different? What would my life be like if it was just slightly better? What would I be doing? How would I be feeling? You think about this. It's just a little bit better. Not massively better, just a little bit. And you think about all of the things that you want for yourself to make it just a little bit better. And how you would feel. Would you feel happy? Would you feel relaxed? Would you feel motivated? Would you feel proud of yourself? What would you feel like if things were just slightly better? You're sitting on that bench making a list in your mind of things that would be a little bit better. Maybe you'd be sleeping better. Maybe you wouldn't get upset about things at work. Maybe you'd be able to switch them off when you got home. Maybe you'd be more active. Maybe you'd talk to people more. All sorts of opportunities for you. You decide what would be slightly better than where you are now. Who would notice that you're slightly better? Would it be friends? Would it be family? How would they feel if they saw you feeling a little bit better? Most likely they'd be really happy for you, because we are tribal creatures and we influence each other, and you'd be sharing your good fortune with them, because your good fortune would make them happy too. And so you realise that a little bit better looks pretty good. Things would just be a little bit improved, not massively, a little bit. And what would that little bit look like? And once you have this beautiful picture of a little bit better in your head, you think to yourself, what could I do to get a little bit closer and be a little bit better? What one small step can I see myself taking to getting a little bit closer to that little bit better? And you think about the step you would take. It's not too big. You can do it without a sweat. You can do it easily, because that step is a no big deal step. And you think about what it might be. Might it be booking some time off from work? Might it be looking at local gyms in the area? Having a look at where you might go for a walk? Maybe you might contact a friend to have a coffee after work. It might be to actually go on that walk. You're choosing the step. Not too big, not too little. Something that you've already done, but you can build on. So what will that step be to make you feel a little bit better? As you're sitting on that bench, looking out over the world, what will that step be to get to your little bit better? When you've decided on that step, you can relax, and you can stay on the hill if you want to, or you can walk back down slowly, or maybe you feel even lighter now and even more relaxed, that you want to run down the hill feeling euphoric, because you've realised that there are things that you can do to make your life just a little bit better, and you've decided to take a step, a little step, towards that future, that beautiful future that is all yours. And when you get back to the gate, you look for the black bag, and you can't find it. It isn't on the shelf anymore. The shelf is empty, and you realise that it's just gone. You don't know where it's gone, and it doesn't matter where it's gone. But all of those worries and fears are gone. You don't need to carry them with you anymore. And you can return to this hill any time you like, and you can empty out your worries and your fears into the black bag at any time you want, and imagine a better life for yourself and how you're going to get there. Now, while you're pondering on those thoughts, I want to tell you a story. The woman was shy. Although she had many kind thoughts and interesting ideas, somehow she found it difficult to articulate them. Many times she noticed a group of people who were quick-witted and could tell jokes and stories to each other effortlessly. So she wanted to join them. The things she liked doing, like swimming, running, playing chess with old friends, seemed very boring in comparison to the new friends she wanted. It wasn't long before the group welcomed her, and when she was with them, she too felt amusing and relaxed. The trouble was, the more time she spent with her new friends, the more of her they seemed to want. It was fun at first, but it soon became very expensive and stressful. If she tried to have a night to herself, her new friends kept pressuring her to join them. Seeing her old friends was out of the question now. Her new friends were not patient with her, and the woman began to realise that what she had perceived as their fun and happy banter was in fact gossip and nasty stories. She also worried and she was distracted by her money concerns, so she could not concentrate on playing chess or exercise either. Her whole day was fixated on her time with her new friends. As the woman walked home with a heavy step, she had to wait at some traffic lights, and there in front of her was a stop sign, white writing on red. She stared at it as if it was a message just for her. And as other people walked on when the light went green, she stopped. Her future life flashed before her eyes. More financial and health problems and loss of old friendships. The sign was right. She did have to stop. It wouldn't be easy. Part of her still wanted to be in the group. But the truth of the matter was, they were making her unhappy. As she walked on, she came to the bar where they all sat, and they waved to her. This time she didn't wave back, and she walked home, as if she had lost a huge weight from her shoulders. Remember that you can change your future one small step at a time by focusing on the positive aspects of your life, positive thoughts, positive actions, positive interactions, and look for what you can do better, one small step at a time. As you think of this, you start to feel yourself heavy and coming back into the room now that you've had your journey and that you feel so much better. And you know that you can revisit this at any time you want. You can walk back up that hill, leave your stresses behind, and find a better way to live your life, one small step at a time. If you're going back to today's activities, you can slowly open your eyes, have a stretch, and carry on with your day. If this is the end of the day for you, you can turn over and go to sleep. The story from today's relaxation came from Effective Metaphors for Hypnotherapy by Allegra Etheridge and Tamar Walbridge. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Transform Yourself. Have a wonderful month. I'll see you next month. Take care.